We have, yeah, so here we have Dwayne. Dwayne is a CEO and the owner of Captain Highscaler LLC and Microsoft MVP for security and Azure. So with an over 30 years of experience in the IT industry, he brings up the deep expertise in the cloud security training and experience, expertise architecture. And we are excited to have him join us at Microsoft Purview and the Defender Days 2026. So over to you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and great, great presentation by Tushar, which really kind of really leans into what I'll be talking about today as well. So very good segue around the actual way Purview can help with protecting sensitive data and AI. And I want to thank everybody for attending, and I want to thank all the organizers for Purview Days. I think I am the last session of this track, so you'll actually be working towards these exciting prizes with the quiz here after I am done. But I'm going to be talking about data security posture management in a different perspective than Tushar. As mentioned, I have my own training. I've had my own training company for the last couple of years. I've been a freelance trainer for many years, as well as a cloud security lead for a major, for a global system integrator and managed security service provider. I am actually currently my day job is the instructor program manager for ISC2. So I do a lot around cybersecurity. I also do a lot around AI and AI security. So and like I said, I'm a Microsoft MVP. Actually, this year it has been in the AI platform, but I have been in Azure and a security MVP as well. So I've bounced between categories over the 6 years I've been an MVP. Today I'm going to talk about the aspect of how Microsoft Purview keeps your data secure from development to production. A little bit, Tushar got really deep into how the data security posture management aspect within insider risk management and DLP can actually physically block those uses of sensitive data in the various GPTs that are out there and the various generative AI tools to avoid those being shared on browsers, which is an amazing aspect of Purview and the security features and compliance features that Microsoft has put into Purview and into like Defender XDR for alerts and integrating all that together. I'm going to kind of go a little bit higher level in terms of how that works and how in terms of things you got to think about. And when you're thinking about compliance, you're thinking about maintaining and protecting sensitive information. We're going to talk about that today. So we're going to talk about why data security posture management matters, the challenges around security and governance in the cloud, and then how Microsoft Purview supports and that architecture supports data security posture management, and then kind of the aspect of all of that kind of lays around where our data is located, what our sensitive data is, and the sovereignty of our data, and where the jurisdiction lies. So those are the things that we're going to cover here to kind of wrap things up with the sessions here today. Like I said, a little bit might overlap with Tushar, but I'm not going to go, since Tushar went into the portal and was showing the actual how this can be done. I'm going to give you a little bit more of the why it's important and kind of the governance, risk, and compliance aspect of it all. All right. So what is data security posture management? We talk about data security posture management a lot. It's becoming more and more. Years ago, we were talking a lot about cloud security posture management. Then we started talking about CNAPP, cloud native application protection platforms. So we've got all these security-based acronyms and compliance-based acronyms that we are dealing with now. We've got even SSPM at this point with SaaS security posture management. But what we're doing here and what we're really thinking about when we say data security posture management is is protecting the data itself rather than just the infrastructure. Taking understanding what that data is, classifying that data appropriately, and then using the tools that are available to us. One of the things that I point out around AI architecture, and really any kind of app architecture when you think about it, is what we're using. Excuse me a sec. Sorry, it's early in the morning here. My voice hasn't quite woken up yet. What we're worried about here, and what we've created by our own need and want to utilize artificial intelligence tools and cloud-based tools, is we have created a very large data sprawl. We are gathering data from all different areas, all different places, and we don't have a good handle on where our data is and what level of risk we have. And so data security posture management is bringing that back in and taking it, and getting a hold of that. When we are working with artificial intelligence tools and AI agents and agentic AI and all of the AI applications that are out there, all the things that we're using AI for, what that is ultimately doing is a data engineering exercise. It is finding the data, it's finding the raw information, finding where it is, maybe from our documents, as Tushar was showing before, in terms of where, and could be sensitive information, could be non-sensitive information, could be internet-based information, all of those things. We need to understand where that data is, what that data is, and how we need to protect it appropriately. And that's data security posture management ultimately. So some of the challenges, again, we've created this problem on our own. Ultimately, we have migrated data to the cloud, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Microsoft 365, which many of our users are using, right? Whether it's Azure, whether it's AWS, whether it's Google Drive, whether it's Dropbox, whatever. We have put data in all different types of storage within the cloud, outside of our data center, where we no longer can protect the perimeter, and we have done a very overall, in a lot of ways, unsatisfactory job of classifying what that data is. So we've got a whole bunch of unclassified data. We've got a whole bunch of data out there that is spread across all types of environments, whether it's production, whether it's development, whether it's test types of environment. And then we've got all different people touching that data. We've got our data scientists, we've got our sales our sales applications, we've got our developers, we've got our production environments, we've got our SaaS applications, we got our on-premises applications. All of those things are touching that data, and we don't really know what data it's touching. And so we've got a lot of overexposure, we got a lot of misconfiguration, we've got a lot of data that is being used, that might be sensitive, that might be violations of regulatory and privacy requirements in various regions. We've got different privacy requirements. I'm in the United States, based on the industry we're in. We've got different, we've got in the European Union, and we've got GDPR, which is the most stringent sensitivity practices we have globally. So we've got to understand where we're doing business and where our data subjects are. Okay, and when we talk about data subjects, it is the person, place, or thing that is identified on that document, on that piece of information. It's not the company that is holding that data that is the custodian of that data. The custodian of that data is the one that needs to adhere to those regulatory and privacy requirements for that data subject, and have advocacy and have due diligence and due care around how they're handling that information. So those are things that we've really done probably a not so satisfactory job of handling. I would venture to say that most organizations that you go out to probably have not done a very good job of classifying their data. They have public data that is probably not even labeled as public information, which makes it even more of a challenge to classify sensitive information and confidential information and all the other types of data that we want to protect. Because if we've got a whole gigabytes or terabytes of public data that isn't classified as public, how are we going to weed out and find the sensitive information? And some of the things that have probably been talked about already as part of these tracks with Purview is that there are training classifiers and things like that Microsoft has built into Purview, where we can do some auto discovery and try and find that data and get a hold of that. But again, that's still a very big challenge in terms of cloud and cloud data security. So why does that matter? I kind of talked about that already a little bit. If we aren't classifying all of our data, we don't know what we are exposing and where our data is, where our data might be exposed. So Microsoft Purview, we'll talk more about that, helps us with that, and then helps us to reduce that data exposure and that risk. Data governance, when we talk about data governance overall, it's not just compliance. Governance is understanding, again, those regulatory requirements, the ownership of that data, who owns that data, having accountability for that ownership, and accountability overall for the usage of that data. Again, as Tushar showed in the previous session, Tushar showed how if somebody tried to put a credit card number or something like that, if we've got an insider risk policy in place, they try to put it in ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Gemini or Copilot, it's going to flag it. That's good data governance in that case. That's a prime example of how Purview can help us with data security posture management, with data governance. But it's up to us to plan for that. It's up to organizations to have the justification and understand the need for upgrading from that E3 license to an E5 license to have data security posture management for AI and all these AI platforms that everybody's using. And one of the key things to understand is in the Purview platform, data loss prevention policies, data security posture management for AI, with insider risk and DLP policies, is not just Copilot, as it was pointed out and as it was showed. If somebody's going to DeepSeek, somebody's going to ChatGPT on their internet browser, on their computer that is logged into the company's Microsoft 365, it will not allow that. It will not allow that data to be shared. But first and foremost, that data has to be marked. It has to be classified, has to be recognized that it's got that information on there, or again, set up various regular expression or regex policies to look for, that 16-digit credit card number or the 10-digit social security number or a driver's license number in whatever country we're trying to manage data on and govern data on. So those are all things that we need to look at, and we need to make sure that we are considering when we are talking about data governance. So again, pointing this all out, what we're saying is it is a exercise in managing risk, in understanding the risk, in identifying that risk. Many of the risk management frameworks around AI, we've got to, first and foremost, is planning and understanding what our profile is as an organization. And so all of you here, depending on what your role is within your organization, should be asking those questions. Because, if you're in an organization, your sensitive data is in that organization. So you want to understand, even if your role is not in AI development, it's not in AI security, it's not in data security posture management, it's not in overall, security operations or anything like that. As a individual, you should have an idea of what your organization's risk posture is and where they are, making sure that they understand the potential risks that they have in terms of compliance and things like that. So, strong data governance, controlling the control aspect of things. So again, we've got data assets everywhere. We've got our laptops, we've got our OneDrives, we've got our SharePoint sites, we've got Azure storage, we've got S3 buckets, maybe we're doing a little bit of AWS too. We need to make sure that we are planning and we understand who owns that data, what that usage is, and the accountability for protection. And this is where, certain things in terms of, understanding what compliance we have to have. Are we governed by GDPR in the United States? Are we in a healthcare organization and governed by HIPAA? PCI DSS kind of goes globally. Are we handling credit card data and things of that nature? We need to understand where that exposure may lie. And again, generative AI kind of throws a big loop in that. What I generally use is and that most people can relate to. If you've got children or have had children, think about when that child first started to walk. When that child first started to walk, there was this freedom that this child felt. And this child then decided, then you were following this child around to make sure it couldn't get into things. Okay. So what most of us do is we put child safety locks on certain cabinets where we've got cleaning supplies and things like that, so that the child can't get into that and drink poison, right? Those are all things that we have to think about in terms of AI. Unlike other applications where we develop an application and we point it to the data it's going to use, and that's where it's always going to look for its data. Most AI agents, AI tools, and things like that will go and look for and try and find that data elsewhere. It will try and learn that, here's a folder that I can get information from. Can I go further on in that folder? So having proper governance, ownership, again, it's not unlike our users and principles of least privilege and putting zero trust frameworks in place to our AI agents and our AI tools and our AI applications. Okay. I see a good question here. Is it possible to use another third-party tool for auto-labeling the data? Yes. Labeling the data and utilizing that data, we certainly can use other tools. There's other tools out there. Microsoft is very good at allowing levels of open source and things like that. If you want to use a different tool other than Purview for data security posture management, you certainly can do that. If you've got a different tool, a different data loss prevention tool, insider risk tools, those certainly can be used with your data within a Microsoft 365 environment. What I would recommend before you invest in that, if you've already got that in place, I can understand that. What I would recommend before you look at that and do that is that you look at the total cost of ownership of your existing Microsoft 365 licenses across your organization. It's a little bit extra per user to upgrade from E3 to E5 to get these features, get a whole bunch of features within E5 in terms of even like identity protection and privileged identity management and all of those things that you get in terms of the security platform and Defender XDR platform, plus the Purview platform and all of those things that you get for, again, a small upgrade cost per user. That could be less money per user than investing in and utilizing another third-party tool. So keep that in mind. And Microsoft is constantly evaluating and constantly adding to the capabilities of Microsoft Purview. And what does Purview do? Again, provides that visibility across not just Microsoft 365 and Azure and Dynamics 365 and all of the Power Platform and all SharePoint and all those capabilities within Microsoft, but other cloud services. It does work with AWS S3. I believe there's capabilities now with Google Platform, but I know for a fact S3 buckets you can bring that into Microsoft Purview. Again, and dozens and dozens of generative AI platforms of GPTs that everybody's using is all within and has capabilities of use within the Purview DLP and insider risk policies. The discovery of and classification of sensitive data. You can audit your data, you can train your data, discover that sensitive data, all utilizing Microsoft Purview, which then ultimately helps us in managing that data estate, monitoring, and improving our data security posture overall, which is what this talk is all about. And this is where I kind of get into my public service announcement around monitoring. The key to all of this is understanding what our risk is and monitoring for that risk and understanding that risk. Because if we are not monitoring how our data is being used and understanding how our data is being used and understanding where our data is, we can't protect anything. Keep that in mind. So having the proper monitoring tools and the proper monitoring strategy, having the proper awareness strategy for our users to make sure that they understand the importance of protecting data is paramount to any of this being successful. Okay. And to kind of take that a step further in terms of kind of a summary architecture around all of that, and kind of looking at this as a holistic perspective of Microsoft Purview is, and one of the terms that I'm sorry.
Okay, so I want to write a blog post, a series of blog post. The intention about a blog post is about how to use MCP, basically a natural language, in the Claude or in VS Code, and connect to Office 365 MCP. So it should connect to everything, what is what, every details and other stuff. To start up with, there's two ways of going forward with this. One is installing Node.js and then installing CLI for Microsoft 365. And after installing Microsoft 3.
Okay, sorry, I don't think that was a question necessarily. Okay. Sorry, I lost. So all of this, when we're trying to think about, managing our data and understanding where our data is, what our visibility is, and our classification of our data, we want to make sure that we are planning for this appropriately. We're looking at this throughout the life cycle of our data. So we want to watch and we want to look at how, where our data is, discover our data appropriately, what the ownership is, the usage, and look at it throughout the development and usage life cycle. Essentially, is what this kind of summary architecture is kind of putting here. We've got to understand, so this middle bar here of what Purview can help us with in terms of discovering, classifying, governing, and monitoring our data can help to make sure that we aren't exposing sensitive data during development, testing, and production and use. We've got to understand, the ownership, the usage, the protection, accountability, the data sovereignty. Where is our data lie? Where are our data subjects that are being named and being used in that data? And from that all, then we reduce that data exposure and that risk and create stronger compliance and understand and govern over our data much better across the entire life cycle. I don't like using the term, DevSecOps. Security and compliance and accountability is something that starts at the beginning and is something that we should think about throughout development, testing, and production and use. And it should be something that everybody, that we have a culture built around this in understanding that risk. And again, starting at the beginning and kind of going back to where we talked about in terms of our cloud challenges, is that we have a lot of challenges that we created on our own. We didn't think about generative AI and, OpenAI and DeepSeek and Claude and Copilot when we started migrating data to the cloud. And, the pandemic accelerated a lot of that problem because a lot of people moved to the cloud very quickly, probably a little bit more in haste than they should have without classifying our data. We've got a very large data classification problem out there that we've created on our own because we have not done our due diligence around discovery and understanding what our data is, properly identifying our risks and understanding where our risks are and how we can govern, what our ownership is, where's our accountability, who's using that data. And in a lot of cases, when we're talking about AI, we got to understand where that usage is. We got to protect accountability, have accountability, and make sure that we are addressing proper access controls, proper principles of least privilege to that data with our AI tools, our AI agents, our AI applications, and things like that. You're doing that through the testing stage, doing that utilizing testing tools. I've been teaching lately and kind of doing a train the trainer around. CompTIA has their new Sec AI certification, which has a lot to do with security around AI. I know Microsoft's working on a lot of new certifications around protecting data and protecting, security controls and things like that around AI. Those are important aspects of AI. One of the, we're a little bit behind in some ways around training and understanding around the security and governance aspect of AI and AI agents. There's a lot of training, a lot of courses, a lot of data, or a lot of how to develop AI agents and AI applications. There's a whole lot of using AI tools and AI agents out there. There's not a whole lot in the middle of how do I govern over that data? How do I protect that data? The best way to understand that is to understand data engineering, because that's all this flow here of that extract, load, and transform, or extract, transform, and load aspect of running our data through an AI agent. We're going to extract it, extract that raw data from wherever that source is. We've got to make sure we've got proper principles of least privilege in place. And then we run it through our models, we test our models, we make sure we're using, we're responsible in the use of our models, we're ethical, we're non-biased, and then we can present it into production. And those are all key aspects of things, and Purview, again, can help to govern and monitor that as well. Knowing where your data is, again, data discovery across cloud and hybrid environments. Where's our data? Okay. Data sprawl, making sure we have proper guardrails, have proper control, permission set for access to data. And we can do that at the front end. Okay. Understanding where that visibility is. The beginning of all of that and the understanding of doing proper risk assessments and having proper governance and strategies are important to all of this. Again, one of the I've taught the data engineering course that has been retired by Microsoft and replaced by the Fabric courses, but there was this. I've used this in other talks before, because there's the data engineering strategy of know your data, protect your data, govern your data. Forgetting one. Know your data, classify your data, or know your data, classify your data, protect your data, and govern your data. There's like 4 boxes there. I haven't taught it in a while because it was retired, but that's an overall data engineering strategy. And it's no different, again, when we're talking about data security posture management. We can't protect and have a good data security posture if we don't know where our data is. Where is our data in? What cloud storage locations are we in? What on-premises storage locations are we in? And what is that? What is that data? That data sprawl and potential for overuse, overexposure of data during development, during testing, during production. Are we properly classifying that data so that we can make that data anonymous while we're working with that data, while we're testing that data, so we're not exposing in our agents, we're not exposing in our applications. It's all a foundation of doing proper risk management, having a proper risk management framework in place. And that's really ultimately, if you walk away with anything from this talk, is that it's very important to understand all of this at the beginning. Okay. And again, to reiterate, we've created our own problems with utilization and data loss and data sprawl by migrating to the cloud without classifying our data before we move to the cloud. But again, Microsoft Purview can help a little bit with that. And again, understanding what data sensitive, identifying what personal identifiable information, financial data, regulated data, GDPR, privacy data. We got to make sure we're consistent in that classification across those cloud and those hybrid on-premises environments. Because and again, I can't emphasize this enough, that includes classifying public information as public. If we're not worried about that data, we still need to classify it, even though it's public, because if we are looking to find potential exposures, then we need to make sure that public information is classified. That way we can find gaps of data that was not classified appropriately. If everything in there is, or everything public is not classified, then we've got to weed through a whole bunch of information before we identify that a piece of sensitive information was not classified. If we classify every piece of information that we load into our storage environments, and it's all labeled appropriately, and then we find something that is not labeled, then we can label that much quicker than weeding through a whole bunch of public information. Just keep that in mind when we're thinking about data classification. It's not just a one-way street. Data sovereignty, we got to know, so when we talk about data sovereignty, we're talking about where that data is, and where that data's jurisdiction is. Okay, so we may be a United States organization, but we might do business outside of the United States. And if we've got a data subject that is in France, we need to make sure that we are aligning to GDPR requirements for that data subject. So we've got to make sure that we have the proper privacy governance in place for that data subject. Okay, that's a requirement, and we should be storing that data in France and not in the United States to avoid jurisdictional issues. If there's some sort of legal, litigation or something like that, and we've got that data in the United States, it could expose other people's data as well. So data sovereignty and making sure data is held in those locations is very important. There's a reason why before we assign Microsoft 365 licenses to users, that we identify a usage location. And if you're not familiar with that, if you've ever tried to create a license or assign like a Microsoft 365 license to a user, you can't do that without a usage location assigned to that user. If you do that in the Microsoft 365 administrator portal, that's a requirement. If you're doing it in Entra ID or in the in Entra in the Azure portal, that's not a requirement because you're not always assigning people licenses in Azure. But once you try to do that, it's going to flag it as no location. And the reason for that is that lets Microsoft know that this person's usage location is in the UK. So we're going to store their information for OneDrive and everything like that in the UK. All their logging and everything like that's going to go through the UK. So if there's a litigation or a need to gather that information for GDPR or whatever, they can very easily subpoena that information. And also for the user and the data and the privacy and the protection of the data subject, it builds that data sovereignty piece. So again, aligning those regulatory requirements, understanding again where that data is being handled. We might have the US, we might have India, we might have again France, or we might have Australia. We've got to understand the regulatory requirements for each. And that's an important aspect to all of that. So, some key takeaways. Data security posture management if we've got a strong strategy around data security posture management, it's going to help us reduce data risk across our cloud, across our life cycle of development, testing, and production, and our use of AI tools. Having a strong risk management framework and strong governance over our data and our data usage is critical to our security and compliance. It's critical to maintaining privacy to our organization. And ultimately, again, Microsoft Purview supports all of that through its data security posture management tools for visibility, classification, and control. So I'll leave everybody kind of with the architecture here, that architectural design that really kind of summarizes everything we've talked about here in the last 40 minutes or so. So I want to thank everybody for your time here today. I think let's see, if there's any questions or anything, certainly I think I kind of gathered most of those here. But I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the organizers of this event. And I think I'm the last presentation of the day, and your next stop's going to be taking your quizzes. So good luck, and hopefully some of you run away with some prizes. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for your the time to present. So folks, let's get into the track 1 link. We'll be having a quiz. Okay, so kindly join the track 1.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, have a great day.